That is, if you're a bit more literate than you look. John Francis Byrne was the basis of the character Cranley in James Joyce's book, A Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. Now, this particular story happened to Byrne back in 1902 when he was a student. He, along with two of his cousins, decided they wanted to rent a house in a part of Dublin known as Cork Hill. It is right beside Dublin Castle and also quite close to Trinity College, which they attended. So it was perfect for these young people's needs. But when they went to view the property before they moved in, they were met by some very strange occurrences. While they were in one of the rooms upstairs, they saw the word ghosts written above a mantelpiece. And while they were in that room, they heard the sound of footsteps coming across the floor from the room above them. Now, they assumed there must have been someone else looking at the property that day. But when they inquired with the estate agent later, in a rare moment of honesty from an estate agent, he assured them that they had been the only potential renters in the house that day. But Byrne and his cousins, they dismissed these silly little things, and they continued on with their plan, that they were going to live in the rooms upstairs of that house and try and rent the rooms downstairs as offices. Now, it was John's cousin Mary who went to pick up the keys. And when she went back to the property just one more time to inspect it before they moved in, she was again met by a very strange occurrence. While she was in one of the rooms upstairs, she heard the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs towards her. Now, after a quick look around and unable to find anything, Mary decided to lock up and make her way home. But Mary was stopped outside the house by a workman on the street, who warned Mary not to move into that house because it was haunted. The workman told Mary that this house was the former meeting place of an infamous gang of nationalist Irish assassins known as the Invincibles. Now, the Invincibles have been found guilty of many crimes over the years, but most famously, they were found guilty of the 1882 Phoenix Park murders. Now, this is the name given to the gruesome stabbings of Lord Frederick Cavendish and Thomas Henry Burke. Now, after these stabbings had occurred, there was a nationwide manhunt for the perpetrators. So the three leaders of the Invincibles gang decided that they would save their own skin. And they turned against their own men, and they testified against them in court. 5 members of the Invincibles gang were sentenced to death for these crimes. But it is said that while these 5 men were being dragged up through the streets of Dublin to the gallows to their death, they swore that they would get revenge on their traitorous leaders. Now, the workman told Mary that it was these 5 men's souls that wandered through the rooms and hallways of that house on Cork Hill, looking for revenge on anybody that lived there. So Mary, she rushed back to her cousin John, and she told him what the workman had said. But John was a brave sort of son, and he dismissed these things as urban myths and ghost stories. And he decided that he would spend his first night in that house alone. He took along with him a few small personal belongings, a candlestick, some candles, and some matches. And he intended to have a lone vigil in one of the rooms upstairs. Well, sure enough, in the middle of the night, Byrne was awoken by an almighty commotion coming from downstairs. And as he searched around for his candles and his matches, he heard the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs towards him. Byrne cowered in the corner in fear. The footsteps came to the door of the room and stopped. Suddenly the door swung open, and as the footsteps passed through the room, all of Byrne's personal belongings were thrown violently all around him. Byrne cowered in the corner and he screamed in fear. Suddenly the footsteps stopped. The commotion coming from downstairs also ceased. And as Byrne looked around the room, he realised that all his personal belongings that had been thrown so violently all around him, well, they had returned to their rightful place. Now, needless to say, Byrne and his cousins decided against moving into that house. You see, it appears they were not welcome there. Or maybe the spirits were only just trying to warn Byrne and his cousins. For you see, just 1 year later in 1903, there was a vicious and destructive storm in Dublin City, and a falling chimney stack crashed right through that house in Cork Hill, destroying the whole place, and surely killing anybody who would have been there. But then again, maybe this was just a coincidence. Well, I know better.
Oh, God. Don't eat me. That wasn't on me. That wasn't on me.
It's only a story.